Now, some people say this is the worst engine Honda ever made. Now, that may be a bit of a stretch, but there are some issues I want to talk about. I have just over 50,000 miles on the car, so I want to talk about all the issues I've had, some of the issues other people have had, and generally what to watch out for, what you can do to prevent certain issues if you're going to be modifying or driving your car pretty hard. Really brief history on the car. It was first tuned around 3,000 to 5,000 miles. I had a stage 1 tune, so it was tuned really early on in its lifespan. And then I'm doing small bolt-on modifications along the way, but at 19,000 miles, another big milestone, I switched to ethanol, so the car could now run E30. And then at 23,000 miles, I switched to a bigger turbo. And here's the stock turbo here just for reference. As you can see, it's pretty small. But from 23,000 miles to now, it's been about 30,000 miles because I'm just under 55. And nothing too significant has changed in that 30,000 mile mark in terms of horsepower at least. My splitter. Can you see it? My feet on here? Can you see that? That's real aero. That's real. Let's talk about the issues I've had with the car. And although these get a bad rep, I'm gonna say that I've only had one major issue, and it was preventable, but it is a big issue. And right here, I have a head gasket. You can come here and get a close up on this. Show you exactly how it failed. Now, some of you may or may not know about this, but the reason these fail is not the head gasket itself. It's right here. It's the head bolts that cause it to fail. So you have the head and the block that separate, and there's coolant passages in between the cylinders. So when the head stretches, the heat burns here, and then you have coolant that leaks into your cylinders. And then you have a blown head gasket you have to replace. Now, I did my head gasket at around 40,000 miles, which is early. The car was tuned early on, but in general, I would drive the car on a low boost. I ran ethanol very rarely, and it wasn't under too much stress, at least in terms of high boost. But I did drive the car hard, and I want to note that just because you're not running a huge amount of horsepower, if you drive your car hard and you're at high RPM a lot, you're on track, there's a good chance you're going to have an issue with the head gasket. And that's why I think the head gasket is probably the most underdiagnosed, not talked about enough issue with these cars. Because for mine to go up 40,000, and I read on the forums, there's people that have issues all the time. It's something people need to know about because they buy these cars and they want to modify it and drive it, and they don't know what they're getting into in terms of the head gasket. Now, the reason I say that is partially my fault is because I knew it was an issue and it is preventable. If you are going to be driving your car hard and you know you're modifying it, change your head studs. You can take the valve cover off and change the head studs without actually taking apart everything, taking the timing off, taking your head off, getting the head machined. It's a whole mess. Do your head studs prematurely. I have the ARP head studs with the OEM gasket because the gaskets are good, it's the head studs you need to watch out for. And I did this myself, so it is possible. It's a big job and it can be kind of intimidating, but it's not too hard. It's time consuming. I would say it took me maybe 30 to 40 hours, and that's, with finding tools, going to the machine shop, cleaning everything, having the right space. But I think the job alone at Honda calls for probably close to 20 hours. So it is a big job you need to watch out for. Some of the issues to watch out for, it's gonna first start with misfires. So I noticed just randomly doing some pulls, it would break up a little bit, which was weird. At first I thought it was the traction control, but it progressively gets worse because you're gonna have more and more coolant starting to leak into your cylinders. So you're gonna have misfires, and it got so bad that if I tried to go wide open throttle, it would misfire and it would throw a check engine light temporarily. And the car would just start running terribly. And another thing to look out, if you look in your cylinders, you might be able to actually see coolant pull up. If you get a scope, you might need a special tool for that, but you can see coolant in the cylinders. If your spark plugs are clean, or if one is cleaner than the other, the burning of the coolant actually steam cleans the spark plugs, and that can be another sign. Cold starts is a big one, and I'm gonna have clips of all this because I have experienced it and I did get some footage of it. But on cold starts, from the car sitting, coolant leaks into the cylinders, and you start it up and there's a lot of coolant in there, and it would sound just horrible. It sounded like a WRX. It sounds like an EJ motor, the infamous WRX startup sound. That's a really big indicator of a head gasket. So I clearly emphasize the head gasket a lot, but that's mainly because it's the only issue I had. It's a big issue and it's the only issue. And that's really important to note because people say these cars are really, really unreliable. And I'm gonna go over those issues in a second. But for me, generally, I drive this on track. I drive the car, I drive it to red line every day and I enjoy the car. And I drive it to have fun with it. And I'm not afraid of it. And it still gives me no issues. So that is something I want everybody to note. Shit, what was I gonna talk about? Now let's talk about some other weak points of the car. One that almost everybody does know is the clutch. The clutch is going to slip with just a basic tune. Mine was weird. It would slip certain days, but not others. If you're modifying your car, you need a clutch, and kind of is what it is with these. But some more serious issues. The head gasket, as I mentioned, but other major problems. The trans. The trans in these are pretty weak. Fourth gear is known to fail, especially on track. And people say it to me a lot because I drive my car on track, obviously, and my fourth gear has been fine. But they are known to fail. I'm running AMSOIL transmission fluid. Not sure if that has anything to do with it, but it's been great for me. But the gears are literally, the teeth just strip off, and the only substitute to factory gears is something like PPG, the most well known. There's some other companies that are coming out, but PPG is $4.5 grand plus install, plus the speedometer correction. So it's a ton of work. So the trans are an issue, and that's something to be aware of, and it's not cheap, obviously. It's a transmission. But on top of that, the engine, the rods are known to snap. And you'll find videos, pictures online. These engines are known to sort of blow up. And luckily, I have a great tune from Derek Robinson. No issues. I do a lot of maintenance, and I think that's a reason I don't have a lot of issues with this car, and nothing's catastrophically blown up yet. But the rods are weak. Some other small things. The oil pump gear can fail. The pistons can crack. Technically, a lot less common, but everything inside the motor, you got to consider it's an economy motor. It's a 1.5 liter. It's meant for gas mileage, so it's not very strong. And the rods are the most serious and most common major engine flaw. So if you're running, from where I'm at, I would say is the maximum comfortable power limit. If you're going to meth, if you're going to over 400, you're asking for the trans or engine to fail at that point. So aside from normal maintenance, oil, tires, fluids, simple stuff, head gasket is the only major issue I've had. So primarily, stay on top of your maintenance, number one, and number two, know the limits of the car. You can drive the car hard, you can drive it, have fun with it, but don't do anything stupid. Don't lug the engine. Stay on top of your maintenance. Simple things. So know the limits. Watch out for possible symptoms of issues. Make sure you catch some things early. But it's straightforward. Other than that, I love the car. I recommend it, even though some people are deterred because it's not as, the limits, there's a lot more to do with the older Honda platforms, and they usually get a lot more cred. But these little 1.5s aren't as bad as they seem, and it's a great car to get into. If anybody has any questions, wants to know anything more about the car, you can always ask in the comments, as well as any other video ideas, anything, leave it all in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe if you are enjoying it. Other than that, that is it for today's video.